Okay, thank you, my colleagues. I met with the legal counsel, Anna, and I want to bring clarity to all the issues, and we're going to move on. Okay. Number one, the first amendment or the first motion that was brought up, that was the RBL, Senator Regine. If you look at that, after I spoke to legal counsel, it was not to deny anybody to proffer amendments. It is the committee stating that we want to allow everyone in this hearing to participate and introduce amendments to the bill. Okay, so that ends that one. All right, now we're gonna move now. So there's no more debate on that. We're gonna move now to the amendment or the motion that was brought up by Senator Moylan, which was to end this virtual and move session to Monday. We have an amendment proffered by Senator Amanda, are you there? Okay, Senator Amanda was to, provided that we have clearance from public health by Monday. And then we also had an amendment by Senator Therese to allow virtual of all other members that can make it for reasons like medical. And number one, I'm in full support of that we allow it. And when I spoke to legal, one of the biggest concerns they had was the Organic Act on reference to being present or not. So and it was leading towards the vote. My recommendation is that when we do go to the committee of the whole, I'm in support of allowing everybody to participate. If you can't make it because there's medical reasons or whatever, but we allow you to participate in virtual in our committee of the whole. But when we come to vote, I'm going to ask that because of legal's view, it may be not organic that you can vote, but you must be present. All right. So with that note, we will now begin with the motion. The first motion was from Senator Moylan. It is to end the virtual and have session Monday. Okay. And then it was amended. It was seconded by Senator Muña, and it was amended by Senator Amanda Shelton. And if I'm correct, I think Speaker Tina Muña Barnes seconded. It was to allow that public health has to give us a clearance to do start on Monday our session. I did get communication from the executive director, Joseph Sanogstein, that we can, but we'll wait for the full official clearance from public health as amended by Senator Amanda Shelton. And then after, we'll first, if we need to have discussion, we'll discuss the amendment of Senator Moylan's motion by Senator Amanda, unless I need to be corrected that we need to go to Senator Therese, but I think Senator Amanda's motion is first, and then Senator Therese Terlai is to allow the virtual of the other members. Okay, being that there's a motion, I see a lot of hands going up. I guess that means you want to discuss it, and I have no problem with that one. Let me see whose hand went up first. I think I saw Senator Kelly. Okay, I'm looking out for hands now. Okay, folks, my colleagues, and then I have Senator Sabina after that. Senator Kelly, please.
Sajos Masi, Mr. Chair, and we may have covered it. It's just that we've kind of gone a little back and forth. So I just want to clarify that with the public health clearance, that is going to include that all of the staff who show up and all of the senators have indeed taken a test within an appropriate amount of time. That is part of the public health clearance. Is that the case?
I mean, whatever clearance they give us, I'm going to assume it's all the clearance as you stated, plus more maybe. I mean, we would have to wait and find and ask that question. What does the clearance entail before we? I mean, I'm hoping that by today or tomorrow we'll know exactly what the clearance is, because we might end up just coming back to virtual, doing the Zoom and continue on what we're really going to do, and move on. But at least it'll allow us to end the day, get the clearance, and prepare for Monday. All right. So whatever that clearance entails, we'll get the details from the executive director, Joseph Sanogstein. All right, Senator.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that will be part of their consideration. I just wanted some reassurance there, but I'm sure it will be.
And I don't blame you. I would want the assurance too before I walk in there. Senator Sabina Paris, ma'am.
Before we went on recess, I made a motion. I would like to just withdraw that motion after speaking with legal.
All right. Thank you, Senator Paris. Does anybody have any objection to that withdrawal of the motion? I see none. Okay, so Senator Tello, ma'am.
Can you clarify
And then
withdrawal?
Therese. Oh wait,
What
I beg your
withdrawal?
pardon, Senator Therese.
Withdrawal of what motion, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair?
that's my question.
Senator Sabina, if you can state it, I
Yes.
think it's the withdrawal of the reconsideration.
Yes, I wanted to reconsider the amendment since I was not present to vote, and I think it affords the opportunity, as we do in caucuses. I feel that we allow all the senators to be present before we make any motion. I want to actually, withdraw my motion because after talking to legal, I was able to get clarification on what the amendment was. But maybe I can proffer another amendment in regards to ensuring that all members are present before we vote on amendments. If they're not excused, I wish to make that amendment to ensure that all members are present whenever amendments are being made.
All right, Senator Sabina, I think we'll hold off on that until we settle if we're going to end our virtual, if that's okay with you. So if we're going to end our virtual and we're going to go to the floor, that would be a great amendment on the floor, so to make sure everybody's present when we're voting and discussing any amendment.
Mr. Chair, if I may, we are
muted
discussing
yourself.
Senator Amanda's amendment to Senator Moylan's main motion. Am I right?
Yes, we were, but I wanted to allow Senator Sabina she made that withdrawal. So Senator Sabina, if you just finish it up and you understand where I was coming from on that, what I just stated.
Are we going to recess until Monday? Because I just want to make sure that.
Oh, you muted yourself. You
Yeah,
accidentally.
I just want to make sure that, as we move forward, that, all members are present, or at least those that, if they're not excused, that they're given that opportunity to provide some input.
All right, I have no problem on that. If we continue on the virtual, then I will call you first before we start it up, that we make that motion. So we make that assurance that everybody participates. Senator, hold on, Senator Lee. I got Senator Tello first, and then I'll be with you. Senator Tello, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, no, actually, the question Senator Shalahi asked, which motion, a reconsideration of the amendment. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Chair, okay, so we're still on Amanda's amendment, which is to wait till public health. That's the amendment. We're doing an amendment to the amendment, right? And that is Sabina's Amanda saying that we have to wait for clearance for public health. Public health, Mr. Chair, did not shut the legislature down. The legislature shut themselves down because and we go in and Joe does a great job. Director does a great job in going there and sanitizing the whole entire place. And then once it's sanitized, then we've been in there before when we've had other COVID positives in the legislature. So I don't understand why we need public health to allow us to go back into the legislature, because we've done it before. Remember, there was another positive at the legislature. So Joe made sure everything, and then we went in when everything was cleared. So I'm not quite sure on the amendment that Senator Amanda is talking about, but that amendment doesn't make any sense when all of a sudden, you know what I mean? We close it down, we can open it up. So that's
I understand, ma'am, but it's just on all precautionary steps. I think that's what Senator Amanda is taking. Whatever necessary steps we need to take. And like I said, I did speak with the executive director, and he said, so far as he's concerned, and he will double check, we're good to go. He'll just bring us that reassurance that even though we've had it before and we did shut ourselves down, we want to make sure that everybody is still stays safe. All right.
Okay, just wanted to verify.
Umbrella. Okay. Thank you, Senator. Senator Lee. Thank you, Senator. And then I'll come back
Thank
to you,
you,
Senator
Mr.
Therese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reiterate for the benefit of my colleagues that each time that the legislature decides to shut down, it's with the concurrence and with the advice of public health. So every time that we reopen, we actually get approval from public health, and we're working very closely with public health on the safest way to open back up. So maybe if other members are unaware that we have been working with public health from the beginning, and so I support the Shelton Amendment. I think it's important that we continue to work very closely with public health to make sure that we don't continue to spread this virus amongst the members and our families and the entire community. So I think it's important to acknowledge that. But also, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to have further clarification if this in-person session at the legislature would preclude, for example, Senator Castro from participating. It's my understanding he may be able to participate virtually, but he won't be able to vote on amendments and vote on final passage of the bill if he's not present. Is that correct?
Technically, that's what I've got from legal, but I know we're going to find a way to get Senator Castro cleared and in there. Right, Senator Castro? You'll be good to go. All right. Senator Therese, did you want something to comment in reference to the Senator Amanda's motion before we get to your motion?
Sure. I hesitate to vote on that without knowing whether all of our members will be able to participate.
I think we can get a report from the executive director if whoever's is good to go is good to go, but it's a matter of personal preference, the HIPAA probably.
No, if we don't know if the motion doesn't pass, whether they can participate virtually, then I hesitate to say we have to go into session now. I want to know. It's like cart before the horse. I would rather. We're trying to accommodate all senators. We're trying to be safe, and so we should proceed in the safe way, and that allows for all senators to participate.
Yes, and I'm in full support of that everybody should participate.
So I'm just asking if the original movers of either of those, the amendment or the motion, that if they could incorporate, that virtual participation in the committee of the whole is a condition of this other. Yeah, it has to come. Okay. We have to know that before we vote.
All right, we have another Senator Vice Speaker. I saw your hand waving. You wanted to speak in reference to the motion, ma'am?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just listening to the discussion, I want to thank DOE for their cooperation and their patience. And it just seems that everything has become a little bit muddied. We were moving along with this hearing. I think that if it's not broken, then don't try to fix it. Let's move forward. The superintendent is here. DOE is a huge budget. And I feel that this discussion is just opening up on another can of worms and just making everything seem more muddy. So, let's just move forward with the process that we had. Nothing was broken. All of us senators are present, and let's get this done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Any other senators like to comment to the Senator Amanda's motion? Senator Moylan, you're good? Okay.
No, I'd like to just make one comment. Possibly, I can understand Senator Amanda's amendment to the amendment. It's pretty good, but I think what we could help to expedite it, since our director there, Joe, has just done such a fine job. Why don't we allow Joe to communicate with Department of Public Health, just in case Public Health is unable to further write the letter because they're so busy and everything. Joe can simply make a phone call. Hey, we're good. We're following your procedures. We're okay to open. They can say yay or nay, rather than waiting for official notice or something like that. I think our director, Joe, could be able to do that. And then we can move back into session and even expedite this process even further. Since we've taken our test and we're back into session and we can actually vote on things and we can expedite this whole process for all those people that are participating. We can take votes on different amendments as well. So.
All right. So Senator Moreland, you wanted Joe, the executive director, to, but so then you're still consistent then with the amendment. Then we get the
Yes.
public health clearance.
Yes.
Joe
and just
will get
allow
it.
Joe
See
to do it.
See, I'm only looking at it this way, my colleagues. If we end today and we're waiting for public health's green light for safety reason, and they give us the word for Monday for sure, if they tell us we're not cleared, then I will communicate with you and we'll get right back to virtual and we continue moving. All right, and exactly what the Vice Speaker said, it's not broken, we just move on. Are there any other discussion we need to move? Senator Amanda Shelton, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Now with your advice from legal counsel, if we were to go into the committee, back into the committee of the whole, if members were not present due to medical reasons, they would not be able to vote on amendments or anything that we're voting on in the committee. So as much as I want to amend my amendment further to allow for them to do so, I know that I can't based on our legal counsel's advice. And so I just want to state that for the record that we can continue now in the committee, as the Vice Speaker said, be productive with the agencies that we have online and keep moving with the full participation of our body. We've already made the amendment to allow for us to adopt amendments within this markup and move forward that way. So I don't want to prohibit anyone from participating in the voting process when we get back into session. So if we can continue these next 2 days in this body right now, or in this virtual form, then I'm fine with that, Mr. Chair.
All right, so what are you stating? Are you withdrawing your amendment or are you sticking with your amendment?
No, I would like my amendment to stay with the original motion in the event that motion passes, but I am not in favor of recessing now to move into the committee move back into session if we can still work these next 2 days until Monday, especially because we have the full participation of the body. Once we go into the committee of the whole, we have already been told that due to Organic Act issues, if our members are not present and they're participating virtually, then they won't be able to vote on amendments.
Understood. Okay, so any further discussion on the motion? We're talking about the motion now. We're not going to talk about anything else. Senator Kelly, what do you have, Senator Kelly? So we can wrap this up.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to verify. So if we move, and I do like the idea of continuing to work over the next couple of days, let's be productive every day we can. But if we recess here and we try to go into session on Monday, but for some reason something happens and we can't get the clearance, are we just recessed here so we can go straight back into the committee, or do we have to do another 48-hour public notice?
Well, not unless you want to make an amendment. I mean, if we can't go back in, I'm gonna safe to assume that we can stick with what was decided on the committee of the whole, that we give the 48-hour notice. I'm expecting to get an answer today from the executive director. Can we go on? Are we ready to go? And if he tells me that we can go on Friday, then we're going on Friday on full session. I want Senator Castro to participate virtually. Voting part now is another thing. All right.
Is there any
Mr.
understanding
Chair, I have a point of order,
when the
please,
executive director?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a
stand
point
by,
of order.
Senator Kelly. Yeah, point of order. Your point of
The
order.
point of order is the legislative secretary spoke. I thought that was a closing. So if you allowed her to close, then you need to call for the vote, sir. I'm just stating a point of clarification so that we can move forward.
Okay, Senator Kelly, why don't we go, Senator Sabina, you have something? Otherwise, we're gonna move to vote.
Yeah, so I have a point of inquiry regarding voting on the amendment. So RBL's amendment basically is about proffering amendments, but when do we actually vote on the amendments?
Oh, we'll discuss that after we finish this motion, Senator Sabina. I know where you're getting on that one, but we're on the motion first to, with the Moylans and the amendment of Senator Shelton. Okay, and then we'll come back to you, to that question that's in reference to the first motion that already passed.
Yeah, can you clarify?
And we'll get you an answer.
Yeah, can you just clarify that now as far as voting? When is voting going to occur? Is it going to occur? So if we're proffering amendments as we for the substitute version of the bill, when does it become integrated into the bill?
When the committee ends and we're going back to session, we'd have to incorporate it in the bill. We have my staff standby ready. They're typing away if they need to do any amendments that's approved by the committee to present as a substitute bill 282-35 as amended by committee.
Okay, so the actual integration would require 8 votes, does it not? So
yes,
basically,
it'll end up. If you notice, but Senator Sabina, why don't we finish this amendment first, because we're going into the motion prior, okay, and then we'll catch up with you. All right.
Okay, this doesn't have any bearing with the current amendments. I mean, current motions.
No, it technically doesn't, because this is allowing everybody now to decide: are we going to continue into virtual or get ready for session? Okay, so everybody's allowed to vote on this one. It's a motion.
Right,
okay?
right. But I think, and we're thinking about going back into session in the session hall. At what point are we voting on the amendments?
If we're going, Senator Sabina, if we're going back to session, we end virtual right now. That's what the motion is.
The actual vote doesn't occur until we're in the session hall. Is that correct?
No. When we go, if you're following what the RBL, Senator Lee's motion, that is if we stay on virtual. Okay, so that's why I'm saying is let's decide Senator Amanda's and Senator Moylan's motion and Senator Reese, and if we stay in virtual, then exactly we can answer your question on when it's incorporated and so forth. But if we end the virtual today, because we're going into session Monday, there'll be no amendments entertained, because we're not in virtual no more. Okay.
So then Senator Lee's amendment doesn't apply when we go back face to face. No,
correct? When we go face to face, it's a different story. We're back to the committee of the whole. Okay, so let's move with the motion. Yeah, Madam Speaker, do you have something? Otherwise, we're going to move to the motion. Are there any other discussion?
Point of order at this time. If you can just read the motion word for word and call for the vote. You've already allowed the proper
yes, the discussion.
Main motion to please. I'm asking if you can reread the motion, the amendment to the Moylan motion, and then call for the vote, because you already allowed for the legislative secretary to close.
Yes, Senator. Joe Mesum, can you read the amendment by Senator Amanda Shelton, please, and then we call for the vote. Do a roll call.
Mr. Chair, I did not understand that was a closing on the motion. We had still people raising their hands to speak on the motion. So I would like to hear from them, Senator Paris, Senator Taitino, to finish what she was talking about. These are relevant. We are here on this motion because of the previous motion that passed. So those are all relevant to whether or not, how we're going to proceed.
The Senator Therese, the motion that was proffered by Senator Moylan and amended by Senator Shelton is not about making an amendment to Bill 282. It's about ending virtual and moving to the committee of the whole in the public format in session. If you want to talk about the issue about amending to Bill 282, that's not being offered at this point. So it has nothing to do with the prior motion. It's about ending the virtual. That's the only question that's offered right now. I mean,
Right,
if
Chair,
we
but
need
it
to
was
talk about
relevant.
anything else, Senator, we can go through that.
Well, it was relevant in the discussion because they wanted to vote on amendments in session. That was as was originally agreed upon, not in a committee or virtually. That's why it's
Yes.
very relevant. That's why
Yes,
this
if
motion
we're-
is in front of us.
No. This motion on the committee to vote on that was all proffered by Senator Lee is only for the committee. If we're back in session on the committee of the whole, you don't need the 6 minimum. You don't need to. You just go to the motion of submitting your committee, your amendments, and then we move on. This is only for this session here, this meeting. So unless you have something else to discuss, we're going to move to the readout. Senator Clinton, you have something you want to bring up, Mr. Vice?
Yes, if I may, just to clarify, and as far as I understand it, anything done in this is the Committee on Appropriations, correct?
That's correct.
Anything done in the Committee on Appropriations is not binding on the legislature as a whole, correct? Anything done in the
Correct.
Committee on Appropriations has to be reported out of the committee, then approved by the entire body on the session floor, correct?
Correct.
Any motions made here don't stand on the session floor. Anything done here only stands in the committee. Still has to be reported out of committee onto the session floor for a final vote. On the session floor, it can be amended again, just like any bill or anything reported out of a committee onto the session floor, correct?
Correct.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Now, that being stated, Senator Luis.
Which means what we can do is just pull all of our amendments and wait till we get to session.
Yes, we can. But that's why we're in the motion to end the virtual and prepare to go to session. Okay, now let's move. Joe, can you read please the motion, the amendment to the motion by Senator Amanda Shelton, and then call for a roll call. Unmute you. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Senator Moylan's motion is to end discussions in the Committee of Appropriations on Appropriations and to return to session on Monday. Senator Shelton proposed an amendment to that motion that would ensure that clearance from the Department of Public Health is granted prior to that to the return to session. And so the vote will be taken by all senators present at this hearing or this meeting.
Okay, stand by, Senator Shelton.
Yes, I just want to know, are we voting on the amendment to the motion or are we voting
Yes.
on the motion? Okay.
Yes, the amendment to the motion is first.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. So on the amendment, Senator Chairman San Agustin.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rigel.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Rigel, aye. Vice Chair Shelton.
Ungan, aye.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Munya Barnes.
Ungan.
Speaker Munya Barnes, aye. Senator Regine Lee.
Aye.
Senator Lee, nay. Senator Therese Terlahi.
Again.
Senator Therese Terlahi, aye. Senator Pt.2 Terlahi.
Again.
Senator Pt.2 Terlahi, aye. Senator Marsh Taitano.
Again.
Senator Marsh Taitano, aye. Senator William Castro.
Nay.
Senator William Castro, nay. Senator Jim Moylan.
Aye.
Senator Jim Moylan, aye. Senator Luis Munya.
Aye.
Senator Luis Munya, aye. Vice Speaker Nelson.
Aye.
Vice Speaker Nelson, nay. Senator Sabina Perez.
Aye.
Senator Perez, nay. Senator Mary Torres.
Aye.
Senator Torres, nay. And Senator Taitagui.
Good.
Senator Taitagui, aye. The amendment to the motion received 10 ayes and 5 nays, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, my colleagues. That motion passes. Now we move to the Senator Moylan's. No. I think we're supposed to move to Senator Teresa's amendment first, correct? Or is it Senator Moylan's? I think it's Senator Teresa who asked for the clearance of the virtual for participants.
Point of order, sir.
Senator
that is not
Teresa.
correct.
I beg your pardon?
Point of order, sir, that is not correct. The amendment by the legislative secretary was to Senator Jim's original motion, and that's how you would have to dispose of Senator Jim's before you
right.
go any other motion, sir.
All right, thank you. Joe, if you can read out now, repeat again, Senator Moylan's motion
Mr. Chair.
as amended.
All right, the motion as amended is to end discussions on the Committee on Appropriations and to return to session on Monday, provided that clearance from the Department of Public Health is granted. On the
Okay,
vote
please.
on that
On the
motion.
roll call.
Thank
All right,
you.
roll call.
Chairman Senator San Agustin.
Aye.
Chairman San Agustin, aye. Vice Chair Rigel.
Wait a minute, Mr. Chair, we only voted on the motion to amend. Now we have to discuss this motion, and I would like to amend it.
Okay, we need to discuss this. Okay, I apologize. Stand by, Joe. On the motion as amended, Senator Moylan, does anyone wants to discuss? I know Senator Teresa want to discuss that. Go for it.
Yes, my concern is whether all members will be able to attend the session, or will they be blocked by rules of, public health or Committee on Rules from attending the session. And if that's the case, I only want to go forward if they're able to attend virtually or in some way. And I would also like to continue discussions today, just discussions without the amendments, because the real controversy is whether we're going to make amendments here, as was just changed recently in the last couple hours, or whether we are going to make the amendments on the floor with everybody present. And so that's my concern. I still want to hear from the legal counsel if it's possible, Mr. Chair, if she's saying that we cannot vote in committee of the whole, but we can vote in this committee. I want that to be very clear.
You're, in other words, Senator Teresa, you're not too sure that in committee of the whole, in the committee, we can pass something and amend it and bring it before the floor? You're not too sure of that?
Well, that's what I don't know. I'm trying to interpret what you're saying, that you're saying that we cannot have virtual participation. I'm not sure. I want that not to be, I want that to be, yeah.
No, the only thing I said, Senator Teresa, the number one, and I mentioned earlier, I'm in full support of
Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I have a point of
yes, Madam
information.
Speaker. Go ahead, Madam
Thank
Speaker.
you, Mr. Chair. The point of information is, how do you propose that we amend the Organic Act by this Monday, sir? That is a very crucial question to ask. So I'm stating that as a point of information, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't think the question is, stand by, Senator Teresa. I don't think the question is about amending the Organic Act. I was very clear earlier when I advised everyone, I spoke to legal. Participating in the committee work, we can all decide what to amend. And Senator Clinton was very clear, that my vice chair, you can amend, you can recommend whatever you want to amend on the bill. When it goes forward, the floor decides. The vote of Senator Will in this committee hearing, and he's a committee member, holds it carries the same weight as every other committee member and every senator here. When we go to the floor, the only question we have is the Organic Act on him not being present to vote. But I'm in full support of Senator Castro participating virtually in all discussions, even when we're in the committee of the whole. Now, the question would be, is to ask legal, if when it comes to vote, can he vote? And will it carry the weight? I think that's your question. Senator Castro, you want to comment, sir?
Senator, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I don't understand why we can't just resolve as a committee to allow every member to participate using conventional rules. I don't even understand why we're deviating if it's such an issue. We're putting on the table Organic Act versus the discretionary authority of the committee chair to simply compromise and allow us to participate. I stepped into the meeting late, and I please forgive me. I apologize for that. And I got caught up in that axle. But as I'm listening to this is almost irrational. I'm hearing on one side, I want you to participate, but you can't. So we all know that. So what's wrong with the current modality and allow each member to participate and proffer amendments and to vote them up or down with the rule of 8? I don't understand, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to leave it at that because I respect you. You are the oversight chair, you are the presiding authority, but I want to state for the record that this is not a complicated question. This is a question of political discretion on the leadership. And I thank you, Senator Lee. I thank you, Senator Nelson, for seeing what's right in front of our face. We're going to sacrifice 2 more days and then even condense further the ability to come together as a team, as a body, to adopt the amendments as proffered. It makes no sense to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Understood. Thank you, Senator Castro. Senator Tello, I see your hand, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I think the previous speaker was absolutely correct with regards to participating and moving forward. But it was also brought by one of our other colleagues that we can do this without having any amendments proffered, especially when the black cloud hanging over our head with the vote of 6. In the legislature, it's always been the vote of 8. And Mr. Chair, you said earlier that all members, even non-members, could be voting. Now, this 6 doesn't make any sense. I understand, and I want to accommodate Senator Castro, and moving forward, we can move forward in discussions. But like my good Senator Luis Munoz mentioned earlier, we can do this without proffering any amendments and move forward. So, of course, I'm going to make a motion if we're going to move forward, because we have this black cloud of an amendment over our heads, especially with this 6, when already, Mr. Chair, 8 is the rule of thumb when it comes to voting on anything. So that is, an amendment I'll make later on, but right. I don't see why. And though I think Senator Treese is also trying to get legal advice, I hope, to find out. So I'd like to hear what she has to say with regards to moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Senator Tello. But I just want to make it clear, at no point in any of that amendment or that motion that was voted on, it asked for 6 votes. It only asked for 6 co-sponsors, nothing else. Just co-sponsors, no vote. And we're going to end up with the 8. And that's the rule that I've always used, and you used it, and we're all in agreement with that. It's just asking for 6 minimum co-sponsors. And that's all I was asking.
I'm just saying, it's never been in the past. Someone said, why break something if it's not broken? And now you're adding this co-sponsors. So that thing's been broken, now you're adding.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to discuss the Moylan's motion as amended? I'm looking for hands and I see none. So we will move. Senator Kelly, just wait. If you want to speak, wave, because I don't see your name here. So do you want to speak, Senator Kelly?
Well, I do want to speak, but Senator Clint had his hand raised before me.
Oh, okay. Senator Clint, then my vice. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I'm not mistaken, his motion is to adjourn this meeting.
Yes, correct. It's to end this virtual.
Yeah, I believe in the committee, the only appropriate motions that can be made would be to adjourn and to report the bill out. You can't motion to go into session from a committee.
No, what is asking?
To go into session on whatever day. I don't think you can do that in a committee. Session's called by the speaker. So it would be a motion to adjourn and report the bill out as is, and then the speaker can call the session and then decide whether or not it's placed on the agenda, etc. Is that correct?
So would that be your motion to adjourn this committee and report the bill out so that the speaker can call session for Monday?
I'm just saying, I don't think you can call session in a committee. In a committee on appropriations, you can't call for a session date.
Well, we got the speaker here, so if she agrees to it, then I guess she'll be calling it for Monday.
Well, all I'm
Anything
trying to
further,
point out is
Senator?
at the committee level, I think the only motions that can be made of this type would be a motion to adjourn and report the bill out as is.
Information, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, the vice chair of Finance and Budget is correct.
All right, thank you. Senator Moylan, would you like to change your motion so we know what we're just adjourning and that's it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you also for the comment and speaker as well for that advice. I'll be happy to amend that motion to follow the proper procedure. And while we're in that case, if we so wish to continue on to the virtual part for the rest of the week, if that seems to be the consensus, and then we can get back into session at the call of the speaker, but just to adjourn it after that, then I'll be happy to do so. I'll be happy to make that adjustment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any further discussion? My colleagues, I'm looking for hands. Okay, we're gonna, Madam Vice. Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I understand that the technicalities of how we address the motion must be very clear. But like I said, things are starting to get muddied. You hear the previous speaker mentioning other alternatives. And so really, we have DOE here. It seems like it's a double-edged sword for us because of a previous amendment that was passed. A majority of us senators are not in agreement with it. And now it feels like we're being pushed, perhaps, into making this decision on reporting the bill out and anticipating the speaker to call session. And so really the crux here is we do want to continue working. The previous amendment passed. Not everyone is in agreement with it. Not everyone had an opportunity to have a say-so on the previous amendment. And so it's, you could see the pressure pulling, well, if I don't have the opportunity to speak on the previous amendment that passed, then I have to agree with this amendment saying we pause until subject to the call of the speaker. And that just makes it even more complicated when we want to continue the work this week. And the addition to that, being called to the subject of the speaker, is that what some of us may not be able to attend during the subject when the speaker does call session. And so that is the unknown. And so there are things that we need to consider. We need to reconsider the previous amendment that passed with not allowing everyone to vote. And then the other one as well is this amendment here. So we are not pushed into this decision of subject to the call of the speaker reporting the bill out.
Okay.
And for the record, I oppose this amendment to reporting the bill out subject to call the speaker because the unknown is not all of our colleagues will be able to participate if and when the speaker does call session. DOE has been waiting for about 2 hours now. And so, I'd like to thank them for their patience and cooperation, but we came here to work. We've been working, everything has been going smoothly until something was passed early on in this afternoon when we reconvened. So, Mr. Chair, this is your call to address these issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Torres, you raised your hand, ma'am. You want to speak something before we can end this and let's get into DOE and let's move on.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm just reading the motion itself that we passed on August the 13th, where the legislature reconvened in the committee of the whole, approved a motion notwithstanding the House rules to refer the substitute bill to the Committee on General Government Operations. The motion also directed the committee to begin virtual discussions on the bill and provide public notice. Session stands in recess, subject to the call of the presiding officer, who shall provide.
You're coming in broken up.
We agreed was the course of action, and being that we're in PCOR 1 right now, I would say, let's just stick with the plan of action that we adopted as of the 13th. And then who in fact is the presiding officer? Would it be the officer of the committee of the whole, or is it the speaker?
Well, it ends up being me, Senator. I'm the committee on appropriation. I'm also the in the committee of the whole. So that being said, Senator Moylan, do you have a comment for your motion so we can get back on track, and then maybe we can discuss that later? We need to wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you asking me to withdraw, or I already made the adjustment, Mr. Chairman, per Senator Rigel's recommendation there and the speaker's comment as well. So if we want to continue on for the rest of this week, that's fine. And if we're able to get back at subject at the call of the speaker, I'd like to see us to go on into session as soon as possible.
That sounds like a better route to go. I don't see any objection from anyone here. Does anybody have any objection to that we just continue on? Let's complete DOE today, and then we'll move on from there.
Motion to withdraw, Mr. Senator Moylan.
Yes, Senator Moylan. Motion to withdraw. You need to state that.
Motion to withdraw, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, there being no objection. Senator Taitagui?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have no objection to the withdrawal, but I do have a comment with regards to moving forward. I have no problem moving forward with DOE as soon as possible, but the motion, so put it this way, Joe, I'm going to make a motion to reconsider the co-sponsorships of amendments to the prior motion. I think that's not needed, co-sponsorships for amendments, but for the sake of moving forward, I just asked Mr. Chair that we get through with DOE today, as the Vice Speaker stated, and that we will discuss this co-sponsorship on amendments at a later time.
All right, thank you.
Senator Moylan's first, please.
Yes, are there any objection to Senator Moylan's motion to withdraw?
No objection.
There being none, the motion is withdrawn. Okay, going back, we have John Fernand. John, how are you doing? Thank you for being patient with us. You're here and you have Zenny with you. And let's see, is Ms. Garcia still there? She's still around? Or, oh no, we got Melanie, Ms. Mendola's back, so we're good. You've all been sworn in. We'll begin. We do have your oversight chair here. I'm looking for, oh, there you are, Madam Vice. So we will begin with chapter 2. And let's see. I guess we'll have Steve. Does anybody have any questions with chapter 2? That what we need to discuss so that we have a gainful participation of BBMR, DOA, OFB, and the superintendent. Because it'd be great if we can find more money for DOE. Yes,
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Madam Vice, the oversight of DOE. Stand by, Madam Speaker, and then I'll get you next.
On August 7, 2020, Department of Education sent us a letter. I think perhaps we should address the letter to start with and then move forward from there.
Okay, is there any way we can get that so that everybody can see that, Madam Vice? Joe, I think that's the letter with the level of effort. Am I correct? So, Joe Mescon, if you can have that pulled up and share that among all our colleagues, put it on Drive, Google Drive, so everyone can understand that they have to maintain. DOE has to basically have a budget that is the average of 3 years in a row, and they need to maintain that level of effort. And they do understand. I know John does understand the predicament everywhere in the nation is facing the shortage of funds. Okay, and Joe, while you're putting that on, Madam Speaker, you had something you wanted to bring up while we're waiting for that to load up, and then we're going to get back with the Vice Speaker for DOE.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the good oversight chair for asking that question. It was kind of the same question I asked earlier, because there have been media reports that have indicated that the budgetary shortfalls for GDOE are putting federal grants at risk. And I wanted to ask the Director of DOE, Mr. Fernandez, to expound on that. And I just want to thank the Oversight Chair for noting that. Cizos Masi.
All right, thank you. While we're getting that loaded on, I asked patience of my colleagues. Joe, do you have that uploaded ready with the clerks? So everybody can see that on their drive and they can see the letter. Everyone was, if I'm correct, was sent a letter, I hope. If not, you'll be able to see it on the Google Drive. The level of effort that's required by.
Not my sir, we're working on that at this time.
All right, and my vice chair will take over for me while I apologize, my colleague. I have to run down to the Guam Election Commission. I got to turn in my financial report. That's required by law. I don't know how many else will need to do that. All right. Thank you, Mr. Vice. And I know that Senator Tello wants to speak, so.
Is it okay, Mr. Chair? I just wanted to make it for the record that the sheets that were passed out, the spreadsheet that was passed out by BB Mar that says not for public distribution, this one we're talking about, I was trying to do a comparative. And I noticed that just for the record that the numbers on this spreadsheet does not reflect the substituted version that's in front of us of the substituted bill. So when they were giving these comparatives, I've noticed that it says that substituted bill 28235, which is the OFB bill, is at 181,374,1182, when actually it's not. On the general fund section, it's only 178,874,182. So I just wanted to note it for the record, if we're being referred back to this larger sheet, the numbers do not jive with the current substituted bill. Madam Vice Chair, or Madam Chair, you see that, right? You noticed that on that green spreadsheet? Okay, just wanted to bring it for the record.
Yes, I'm tracking. Thank you.
Okay.
Just note that this was submitted by BBMR also, and so perhaps it's previous numbers that they put into this spreadsheet are probably the most current that they wanted to drop. But thank you for pointing that out, Minority Leader, so that we can address it.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. Connie, give us just a few more seconds.
Where can we look at this letter in the drive? Can we pull it up ourselves?
Senator, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, we are trying to upload it right now onto the drive.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just trying to put it on the screen. Thanks, Steve. Okay. Once you upload it, can you send the link to the drive to this chat as well?
What is it? I will send that message on. I will do that.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Amanda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Maybe we can have a 3-minute recess. You upload it into the drive and we come back for this recess, Mr. Chair?
I think, Madam Vice, that he left you in charge because he had to go to the Election Commission.
Oh, I thought
I'm chairing. I'm chairing. So yes, let's go ahead and take a brief recess until the document is uploaded. Okay, so we are back from recess live now. Let's go ahead and restart that discussion with Mr. Carlson. If you could reiterate again the explanation you had that you were trying to clarify with regards to some of the comments made by Senator Tello.
If I can,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can I restate the question I had, and then if we wanted to start from the beginning, that was done offline. I just wanted to state my question, and then Lester can answer to it.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned earlier, in the spreadsheet that we received from BBMR, the green spreadsheet, there's a section there under substituted bill 282, which is the OFB bill. Under DOE, where it says subtotal for Guam Department of Education, this is on page 3 of page 8. Under general fund funding, it is placed $181,374,182 million. That was printed on here. However, when I'm looking at the substituted version bill that we have in front of us, funding coming from the general fund is stipulated into the substituted bill has $178,874,182, which is lower. So I'd like to hear from Lester how he came up to that number.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Again, taking the item G, number 1, fourth column over under General Fund, S bill. General Fund appropriation is $177,860,358 plus $500,000 from the General Fund for the Simon Sanchez procurement, plus $513,824 for the Chamorro Studies Division. Those three numbers cumulatively come up to the $178,874,182 that is stated on page 10 under General Fund, line 19. Similarly, if you go down to the textbook appropriation, that is a separate General Fund appropriation, and that is found on page 11, beginning on page section 6, beginning on page 11. That's from the General Fund, so you have to add that as well. Similarly, going down, you've got the $1 million that is at the bottom. That's on page 113. That's why it's my copy it's highlighted. I'm not sure if yours is highlighted, but that $1 million is from the back. You know, again, it's Department of Interior presentation. You know, so we highlighted it because we don't believe that it's an applicable appropriation, but therefore you have the numbers sequentially added up. So they do match, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I mean, if I can hear from OFB regarding that statement that Lester made with regards to the funding from General Fund, and how come we didn't see it here in our substituted version?
Sure thing. Mr. Guerrero?
Yes, Senator. What Mr. Carlson and his description of the amounts that are listed on the worksheet is correct. The $1 million that we're reflecting there was
This is not correct.
yeah, except for the $1 million. We just need to make the correction on the $1 million because it's a matter of presentation on what we were given originally that we stuck in. But it's since been clarified. We just need to make the adjustments.
No, it's not. There's no 1 million from the general fund. The language was provided by BB.
Oh, okay. The $1 million that we're reflecting here from the general fund is really not being tapped from the general fund. It was just language that was provided to us by BBMR, but we're going to try to make whatever necessary adjustments to correct it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Fernandez is there, and I'm sure he's well aware of a continuing program to address deferred maintenance authored by the Army Corps of Engineers. So for the last 5 years, there's been $1 million that the governor has availed herself or made available to the Department of Education to address deferred maintenance under what's on page 113. It is the ABC MOU program. You know, don't ask me what all the ABC and the yeah, I know what the MOU is, but for the past 5 or 6 years, the governor and her predecessor have, in light of the deferred maintenance issues at DOE, provided from their discretionary Department of Interior funding $1 million for this program. When Mr. Guerrero received the information that we gave to him a few weeks back, we of course we put that number in because the governor has committed to providing that funding again in this upcoming year. But you know, for lack of a better place to park discretionary funding, first of all, it shouldn't be in the budget at all, and Mr. Guerrero and I agree on that. And now we're both collectively cleaning up, but it's not a general fund amount certainly, and you know, for the public, the governor has committed to requests for the $1 million in fiscal 2021. So we are going to provide that to DOE. It's just not something that should be reflected in the budget, but for lack of a better place to stick it, you know, in an earlier comparative, you know, it was there and it just got transposed, as Mr. Guerrero said, into the substitute bill. I mean, it's just something that we all agree will fix. It doesn't have anything to do with how things should add up, because everything else besides that adds up, as Mr. Guerrero confirmed. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, now may we proceed with the
Yes.
letter first that we received? Thank you.
Yes, go ahead. So does everyone have access to that letter now? All right, so if everyone has access to the letter now, Vice Speaker Nelson, did you have anything you wanted to discuss with regards to the letter?
Yes, I'd like the superintendent to go ahead and read the letter for the public, and then also then we can begin discussion on this, because this is a critical letter. And it also talks about the maintenance of efforts for supplement versus supplant. There has been a lot of perhaps assumptions that because DOE received $41.5 million, that can be appropriated towards their original operations. But I think this will clear out a lot of the questions that we may have in the beginning as we move forward discussing Guam Department of Education.
Okay, thank you, Vice Speaker. Mr. Fernandez, would you mind reading into the record the letter?
Okay, yes, happy to do that. August 7th, 2020, addressed to Honorable Talina Nelson, as well as Honorable Joseph Agustin, referencing the FY 2021 appropriation bill, and further referencing GDOE's ESF, SEA, and consolidated grants, maintenance of effort, and supplement versus supplant provisions. Buenas and half a day, Honorable Vice Speaker Talina Nelson and Honorable Joseph Agustin. This letter is in reference to the FY 21 appropriation bill regarding the Guam Department of Education's budget. The reduction of any local appropriation shall adversely impact GDOE's federal grants maintenance of effort and supplement versus supplant regulations, and therefore adversely impact current and future receipt of federal grant funds. Specifically, GDOE is required by federal regulation to comply with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 and the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, March 27, 2020. The GDOE received the Education Stabilization Fund to outlying areas, state educational agency from the U.S. Department of Education on May 29, 2020. This grant award is made possible by the CARES Act. As a condition of grant funding approval, the GDOE signed and submitted the U.S. Department of Education certification and agreement for funding under the Education Stabilization Fund Program Outlying Areas, SEA on May 25th, 2020. The ESF SEA grant program provides specific maintenance of effort requirements as outlined within the ESF SEA certification and agreement for funding under the ESF program outlying areas SEA. ESF SEA maintenance of effort regulation states as follows. Section 18008, subsection A, the state's application for funds to carry out sections 18002 or 18003 of this title shall include assurances that the state will maintain support for elementary and secondary education and state support for higher education, which shall include state funding to institutions of higher education and state need-based financial aid. It shall not include support for capital projects or for research and development or tuition and fees paid by students in fiscal years 2020 and 2021, at least at the levels of such support that is the average of such state support for elementary and secondary education and for higher education provided in the 3 fiscal years preceding the date of enactment of this act. In addition, GDOE received the federal fiscal year 2020 consolidated grant, Title 5B, Rural Low Income Schools program. As a condition for approval, a supplement not supplant provision is mandated. Elementary and Secondary Education Act supplement not supplant non-federal funds regulation states as follows. Section 5232 of 20 USC section 7355A, supplement not supplant non-federal funds. Funds made available under subpart 1 or subpart 2 shall be used to supplement and not supplant any other federal, state, or local education funds. Failing to comply with the maintenance of effort and supplement and not supplant non-federal funds regulations will jeopardize GDOE's current and receipt of future federal grant funds. Thank you for this opportunity to provide clarification relative to the federal mandates. We look forward to your support as we continue to safeguard federal grant funds to provide educational opportunities and necessary services to benefit all of Guam students. Sinceramente, John Fernandez, Superintendent of Education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Mr. Chair, may I proceed?
Yes, go ahead, Vice Speaker, if you have some questions with regards to this or comments. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, for the letter. Can you just please make it very clear to the body the appropriation of the $41.5 million of the ESF, how it was divvied up? I'd like to thank you also for participating in the informational briefings that we had just in the past weeks to explain this in detail. But if you can just give a generalized explanation at this time for the body and also for the public, the 41.5 and how it was allocated for the public and private schools that were eligible for this program.
So, I mean, as you mentioned in our earlier informational sessions with the Committee on Education, we provided a breakdown of the $41.5 million, which goes to the state education agency, which is GDOE, but is allocated equitably between GDOE with allocations also for the private schools and the charter schools. So of the $41.5 million, GDOE schools are eligible for $32.1 million. That's a 77% of the budget. iLearn Charter is $695,000. I'm just rounding for, I can provide this later, but $695,000. Guam Charter School, $780,000. CFA Charter School, $272,000. Office of Catholic Education, almost $4 million. It's actually $3,987,000. Harvest Christian Academy, $1.1 million. St. John's School, $572,000. St. Paul's Christian School, $522,000. Guam Adventist Academy, $98,000. Japanese School of Guam, $99,000. And then Providence International Christian Academy with around $28,000. There is a state allocation, which is at 3% of about $1.2 million, and that totals the $41.5 million. The allocation is basically done based on enrollment, unofficial enrollment from the prior year, and that's how the funding is allocated. Now, from a programmatic standpoint, the focus of the funding is in 3 areas, and I apologize because I have these in different areas, but the 3 general areas are for safety and health supplies. So a lot of the funding that's going to to the PPEs that are coming in are being purchased with the federal funds. The second major component is the support for distance learning. So laptops and tablets and internet access and so forth are in that budget. And then the third component is mental health and well-being supports. So if you want further information, I have the full application here. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Superintendent, is it possible to use some of that money to continue the operations now that Guam Department of Education has moved to distance learning? Is it possible to use that money to further this kind of curriculum for the distance learning?
So absolutely, that everything that's going on with regard to distance learning a lot of that can be supported because that was the main intent of the ESF funds. So all the investments in whether it's hard copy materials, whether it's the technology and support for that technology, all of those things can be funded and are intended to be funding from ESF. So that definitely will help us through the course of this year. What is not being funded are the costs for the personnel costs, the contractual, the regular budget items that we see in our budget requests. The ESF funds are really supplementing that. So all the expenses related to the safety supplies, to the additional investments in technology and home learning, and as well as the mental health, some of the mental health work that we're doing is being supported by the ESF funds.
Does the federal guidelines that is attached to the ESF funds negate you from utilizing it for payroll and other purposes for operations?
Yeah, there is more flexibility with the funds, meaning that for most of our federal funds from the US DOE, there is a supplement, not supplant provision. So with regard to funds like the consolidated grant, those funds definitely come with that restriction. With the ESF funds that we have, while there isn't a supplement versus supplant provision, there is a maintenance of effort provision. So the maintenance of effort is a slightly more flexible, slightly more flexible provision, which allows us to do things like retrofit a classroom. We typically wouldn't be able to use funding to really do facility work with our funds, but now we can. So some of those, some of the budget allocated to retrofitting classrooms, for instance, would not be supported. Because these are one-time funds, we did not look and increase any investments in personnel costs. These are one-time funds, so we tried to use them for one-time purchases to deal with this year. But I would just say that the answer is it is more flexible, and I'd have to really look carefully at the specific proposed use, and we would probably want a US Ed guidance on that.
And there has been discussions over the past couple of months about expanding Wi-Fi access to students and to parents who do not have internet within their homes, and also those that do not have tablets and workstations. How is DOE tackling this concern and issue?
So the plan was, obviously with 3 models of learning, that those who had online capabilities would be able to shift to online immediately. And then we have 2 categories of students who were doing home learning by hard copy. Those are the households that we might assume just don't have access to equipment or access to the internet. And so that's one target audience. And then the rest were face-to-face. And the face-to-face include, maybe, I mean, there are different reasons why somebody might want to come face-to-face, but we had those students, around 13,000, who were scheduled to come in face-to-face. So with the PCOR 1 situation being put in place, and I have to be frank, the possible extension or the possible reversion to PCOR 1, through the course of the year, our discussions internally have been to accelerate the purchase of equipment, of technology, and to really accelerate the planning to get those out to support our students. I think the goal would be, right now we've tried to move everybody into home learning, either hard copy or online. We'd like to see more be on the online version, because I think that's working a lot more smoothly and easier to build around. So that's the goal. We recognize that we weren't going to have everything on day one, and of course we right now we have procurement. We have, I believe, we have the indefinite quantity bids available for us to purchase and bring in the equipment. The challenge is we've got to accelerate that, and so the plan is to expand on the online, and hopefully, if home learning becomes a requirement all year, try to shift more families to online. That's what we're planning on. We are working with the governor's office to try to coordinate our efforts, because we were focused on shoring up the equipment as well as the internet access and Wi-Fi access at the school sites. And I know the Lieutenant Governor and I have been working to figure out how might that work, how might we build around that for more village access. So we're using community centers, public libraries, and so forth. So we did conduct a request for information to gather information from the internet service providers, and we're in the process of putting together those options and strategies that we can present to the governor for her consideration.
And what is the cost that DOE has to absorb, and how will DOE pay for this? Will they use ESF? Will they use general fund, special fund? How is DOE looking to pay for this? How is this cost absorbed?
Right.
And what is the cost or anticipated?
Yeah, we were looking to use ESF primarily to fund the school side, which again was equipment for students, and then also internet access, especially around the school site. We want to, create opportunities for after hours present at the schools, and so that funding is going to go there. And then we were looking at the governor's support, perhaps with that funding that's over there with about $12 million, that a portion of that might be able to go towards shoring up community village access. I have to go. I'm happy to share it with you. It's a 72-page allocation. I would say that just overall, of the $41.5 million, roughly 32 million of that is geared towards technology, the home learning part, the technology, as well as some of the hard copies, and but mostly technology. So the vast majority of those funds are going towards supporting the shift to online learning.
Okay, thank you. And what is the execution timeline now that our students are completely 100% distance learning? This leads me to interpret that not every student has the resources to receive online learning at this point, especially when we opened on Monday. So what is the timeline to ensure that every child gets an adequate education? And what avenues are you discussing to address that?
So, I mean, again, as we entered the school year, there was a immediate, last minute shift, which is something that we have to really incorporate into our thinking. We did consider that through the course of the school year, we might see these fluctuations in positives and the public health environment, which would require a short-term shift to home learning for those students who are face-to-face. But now, what we saw with the immediate shift to PCOR 1 prior to opening, and the discussion that we're having is the potential that might extend, that's really impacted our plans. So internally, we had been targeting getting the equipment in, working on the internet access and retrofitting and so forth, and really laying out a plan so that by the second semester, which is really, by January, we would have a much more robust, program for online learning that we could, take the next couple of months to really plan distribution, the accountability, and make the investments needed. We're having to retool and try to figure out how we can accelerate that so that maybe by the end of first quarter, we can begin that expansion of access to our students. So because again, just based on our reading of the public health environment, you know, and then of course, with all of our teachers and staff getting back to school, making the adjustments and understanding a lot of anxiety, just being comfortable in the school facilities, you know, we're looking at this not necessarily being just a 2-week event, but going possibly longer. So that is our goal, to try to, you know, as we've seen the just in the first couple of days, as we've seen the online learning starting, and we've seen the hard copies get, you know, we're planning for the hard copy distribution. We have been discussing the possibility of trying to shift those numbers and move more quickly towards online, the online learning model.
Thank you. And if you look at page 7 of Substitute Bill 282-35, we were discussing earlier the debt service continuing appropriations, more specifically for the Guam Department of Education Series 2000A Certificates of Participation Bond. This number is looking to change to $6,995,000. Can you just explain the impact of changing this number, and what are your talks with GITA in discussing this bond? I don't think it's a refinance, it's called something else.
Could you point me to the section again? Just, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it.
Yes, it's on page 7, section A.
Page 7,
Okay.
line 20. Line 20.
I just want to clarify with Steve, is this is a discussion we had about the adjustments? Is that okay?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah. So my understanding, and I know that there's the various parties are online as well. I was contacted just to kind of discuss the situation yesterday, and my understanding is that that there is an intent and a plan to refinance the debt service relative to you know, to the John F. Kennedy School, and as part of that refinancing, there's an anticipated reduction in debt service. My understanding is that the full debt service commitment needed to be reflected in the Appropriations Act, and that the savings shouldn't be realized at this point, but that there is an intent and a commitment to do that refinancing and return any of those savings to GDOE to make us whole. So if that's the case, I really wanted to, obviously I understand the situation from the financial standpoint and from the borrowing standpoint, understanding why that's necessary, but I just wanted to make sure that it's on the record and that commitment is really important, because otherwise, it looks like a reduction to our budget, and we're already dealing with a significant cut that we need to adjust to, and I wanted to just be helpful to the government in getting its business done. And so with that commitment, I'm fine with moving forward in that manner. And I know I saw GITA on board, and we've always worked well with GITA on these matters. And so if they're saying that it's going to happen, I'd like to put that faith in their ability to get that done on a timely basis. The only other concern, just so everyone's aware, is that I'm sure, but this is not just GDOE, but every government agency is probably strapped for cash around October and November. And so as soon as the refinancing gets done and budgets restored and our allotments are adjusted, we would be, of course, much more comfortable, in making sure we get through those early months of the fiscal year.
Thank you. And Steve, can you please inform us if all of the teachers and aides are accounted for in this budget, and staff to assist this movement of Guam Department of Education with the distance learning and perhaps evolving into, again, face-to-face? Are all of these people budgeted within this substitute bill?
Yes, Senator. As I said, when we developed the ceiling for GDOE, we took into account at the time of putting it together all warm bodies. We also, I believe, allocated funding for limited terms positions that we knew that was going to come up, not necessarily filled now, but just because of the operation of DOE, we knew they were going to come on later on. So that was already a given, and it's done annually. So it's not like it's a vacant position. We treat the rest, and whatever obligations we could cover within the ceiling that was provided, we did our best to do that. Yes.
Thank you, Steve. And Mr. Superintendent, for the for this limited term, have you started to put out perhaps a job fair or start fielding applications also to include add more teachers? Because we know that every school year GDOE has a shortage of teachers, and so they usually pick from a pool for emergency teachers or retired teachers. Have you started doing a call out for this, or if not, when is the anticipated time?
Well, right now
and do you really need those teachers because you're moving to distance learning?
It's, I hope and I know you will appreciate the unique nature of this school year. So we are working to fill what at the last count there were about 50 positions, teaching positions, where there were not applicants in process. And so that was maybe that was about a week ago when we had that update. So we continue to try to fill those positions, but as you know, going into the school year, it's not the same level of enthusiasm that we have from our retirees. We do have some employees who are going to retire due to this, and then we're not sure if there's going to be enthusiasm to double dip and return to help us. So it is something we're tracking. We didn't really do a job fair. We were unable to do one physically. We did put the word out, and we did get a lot of responses. But again, we're tracking 50 positions, but that number could go either way over the next month. As you know, I think at the end of September is normally where we get a lot of those decisions made about retirement, and so that is a concern, Senator. And I appreciate your suggestion that we do further outreach, but at this stage, with the environment, it's kind of hard to recruit in this to come into school. Now, on the flip side of it, you're right that we need to evaluate, and that is something that we're going to have to do as part of adjusting to this budgetary environment anyway. Evaluate how we're staffing in light of the COVID-19 situation. Even though we're not able to, I know you've been asking us to come up with some types of savings projections. We're not going to really have really hard projections. I think that if we can envision a scenario where we can take a part of the year and say we're not going to have in face-to-face learning, and then try to figure out what the savings might accrue from not being physically present at schools. But again, we're not sure how that's really going to fluctuate through the course of the year. So we are going to do that analysis to try to give ourselves some wiggle room in terms of managing our resources. It just depends on how long this goes with regard to being able to go to school or not, and able to be physically at the facility or not.
Okay, and Steve, how many positions for teachers, limited term, did you appropriate to the Guam Department of Education? The superintendent says he has 50 positions looking to open of that sort. And so how many did Office of Finance appropriate for?
We funded approximately $8.3 million worth of limited term, but they also could utilize additional monies within their budget to hire if they needed to hire more. But at the time we prepared these positions, the total amount of vacant positions that was afforded to us or that was given to us, which includes the benefit costs, was about 24.3 million. So what we did is we kind of like took half of that amount and budgeted for limited term, and we were hoping that will suffice going through the school year.
Yeah, if I could.
And how many positions are that? How many positions is funded?
Hang on. Approximately 215 positions.
Okay. Mr. Superintendent, did you have something to say?
Yes. So I know we've had this discussion with you as well as with the Appropriations Chair regarding the structure of our budget. And so, with the cut and the recognition that we do have certain mandates that we have to continue to try to meet, notwithstanding the unique situation this year, which may force us to really look at how those mandates are met during COVID-19, we did ask to maintain the flexibility within the budget to be able to allocate resources accordingly. So in the event that it's teaching that's needed and we have to, we're able to provide that, that the funding to support the teachers in the but otherwise, you've typically given us that flexibility to try to address the needs. And specifically in this environment where we're seeing a reduction, we did ask that be maintained. And then we're happy to work with the board should needs arise or pressures in the budget arise, that we're able to have that flexibility to reallocate resources accordingly.
Okay, and Steve, just to clarify, this is 215 vacant positions?
Yeah, it's limited term positions, Senator.
Okay, tracking, thank you. Mr. Superintendent, the total appropriation minus just in the front page of the budget on page 10, the total appropriation is 209,142,544. Now you have in the back end the additional 1 million on page 112. Continuing on page 113, and I'm sure the additional provisions for some other items. Will DOE be able to operate at this $209,142,544 amount?
Well, I can answer that, but I also, if I could just ask if for some time to also discuss what we earlier went through with regard to maintenance of effort. If we can come back to that at some point, just to give you some further.
Sure. I'm sure my colleagues will have a load of questions for you. So just so we know whether DOE can work with this or not, and so that we can further the discussion about that.
Right. So obviously this is it's a tough cut, and I think we still need to do some reconciliation between the numbers we're tracking and what Steve has or what the substitute bill has. Just like Lester had mentioned, we just want to reconcile to make sure. But at the end of the day, we are talking about a $12 million reduction in our budget, and that that represents a roughly $35 million reduction over since FY18 in our budget. Of course, the charter schools have been removed, but that still does leave a sizable chunk that we've had to adjust to. And so we are well aware and have gone through that process of trying to streamline and reduce. And in this environment, I can say it may not be easy to do, but if this is, we understand the situation with the rest of the government as well. So we understand and we anticipated there would be some reductions. So as we go through this, some of the typical issues with, of course, are looking for savings, renegotiating contracts, trying to savings where we can. And of course, that's going to depend on the nature of the school year. So there may be some things that are easier to do because of the fact that we're doing home learning. And of course, those are the things that we're going to target first. So right now we're tracking about a $300,000 savings in our utilities, or I think in power, based on the last few months. So of course, if we don't have to do face-to-face or we're not able to do face-to-face, then we can start tracking that savings and keep you informed as to the kind of relief that will provide. Similarly, with any of the other operations associated with not having our facilities fully occupied. So we are looking at the contracts, and I've got the team just trying to give us some estimates of what we can, what we can save under that scenario. But again, because we don't know when face-to-face will return and how we will, move through the year, we can't really, give you a good hard number, except to give you maybe on a monthly basis what the possibilities are. We will have to look at of course, our support is for the schools and looking at filling those positions. But as you know, there may be some positions that remain vacant just due to a lack of applicants. So in that case, we appreciate the flexibility and the budgeting for limited term, but we know that we may not have, the ability to fill those positions anyway. And the other thing is in the central office, we're already thinking that if we're under a cut, we're going to have to look at a hiring freeze a continued freeze on hiring positions at the central office. So there are things that we know are going to be hard decisions that need to be made. Whether it'll go beyond, those types of measures are going to depend on our discussion with the board, given what we can estimate and provide in terms of the contingency plans for the year. But it's not going to be easy. I just say that I understand the rest of the where the government is in terms of the overall revenue situation. My bigger concern is really the maintenance of effort situation. And then when we get to that, I'll explain why that is.
Okay. The school lunch child nutrition meal program at $12.5 million. Is this reimbursable once DOE pays up front?
It gets reimbursed. I'd have to look and be able to answer that, but yes, it's a reimbursement. There is a local subsidy associated with it, but yes, these are reimbursable meals from the school breakfast and lunch.
Okay, so is it possible that you can use that money that we appropriated for your lunch meals for something else?
I'm sure.
I would reimbursed?
I would have to affirm that, but yes, if it's reimbursed, then it would be able to support other parts of the department's needs.
Okay. Also, the $1 million that was given to you earlier this year was a drop down from the executive branch. This looking at the comparative document here, we have the GDOE capital improvement projects at $1 million. This is, I believe, really with the intent to support Simon Sanchez. Are you moving forward with that intent, or are you going into another direction with this $1 million amount?
So can I briefly address food and then come back to Simon Sanchez as well?
Sure, go ahead.
What I didn't want to leave is that, no, I think it's just important because I want you to know what we're going through in terms of trying to figure out where we'll be able to save or where we'll be able to use. So right now we get reimbursed for every meal that gets served by the federal government, but we also, it's not fully subsidized. So every meal we serve does cost us. So we have about $5 or $6 million in local subsidy. So
$5 million in local subsidy.
Right. So now the challenge is trying to figure out how we're able to serve in this environment. So going into this school year, the intent was to serve school meals at the very least to those who attended school on a day-to-day basis. Now, when we did the breakdown of all the students who signed up for face-to-face, and again, we assumed all those who didn't respond were going to go face-to-face, and we divided those numbers into 3 cohorts, and then going through a Monday through Thursday school week with Friday having no students on campus. When you look at it from the food service contractors, point of view, they would only be serving, if everybody ate, they would only be serving, between 10 to 20% of their normal, the normal school population. So right now, those meals, that means that even though we would save on the local subsidy, we wouldn't get it reimbursed, very much because it's such a much lower amount of students that would be fed through that method. We are looking at ways to serve school breakfast and lunch every Friday through non-perishable items, using non-perishable food items to give students 5 days, especially if they're home the entire week, 5 days of reimbursable meals, but in a non-perishable form that their families can use to support the students' needs at home. So again, if we were able to expand and launch that program, we would then again be reimbursed for those meals. But it really, right now, we haven't gotten the final approval for that. And it means that at this point, the food service program would be a shell of what it has been in the past. And that means that it has an implication for how much reimbursement and how much local subsidy will actually be spent this year. So I just want to kind of clarify that we're not sure about, we definitely don't want to save money on the backs of our kids. We are going to want to feed them, but it's going to be dependent on being able to do so in a creative way, and then being able to ensure that we have that local subsidy and federal reimbursement working together to provide that.
Right.
Support.
And so now that we're in PCOR 1, are we looking, is there an opportunity or an avenue for us to avail to this kind of cost that you have done in the past through FEMA as well, or is this just something you have to absorb the cost and there's no avenue around it?
You cut out a little bit, but I'm assuming you're asking if we can continue to serve meals during PCOR 1 in the ways we did before. So
Correct.
yes,
with the cost being reimbursed through FEMA, which is the avenue that you're currently looking at, or utilizing some of the CARES Act money to assist in this kind of cost.
yeah, the real issue was that we were moving away from that operation because we were starting school up again, and the roles of the teachers and staff were again going to be changed. So whether it's reimbursed by FEMA or not, that's something we can definitely explore. I think we're running into some challenges because I don't think FEMA will reimburse some of the federal subsidized costs already, but that's for. What I will say though is that the changed operation was because we were school, and having a grab and go was not going to be necessarily workable in that same situation. We were planning to use Fridays at every school as a distribution opportunity, and instead of serving hot meals like we were every day during the last 5 months at 12 sites, we were going to serve provide bags of non-perishable foods to the students and their families at every school site on every Friday. And that's the plan that we're working on. So that would allow us, when we come back face to face, from Monday and to Thursday to be unimpeded, but food support still be provided, once a week. If the PCOR 1 situation does extend, then obviously we're going to be worried about the fact that, we've got, this situation where nobody's at school eating, and we might look at other ways to expand distribution or to feed the kids during those days. It just depends on how long we end up going without face-to-face.
Okay, thank you. And Steve, just to ask how you came up with the number for DOE's appropriation, is this going to allow them in the current state to continue their operations as they move forward, this $209 million, or do you foresee them having to suffer something, sacrifice something that will impact the learning of our children? Or is this a stable number that you have funded for the teachers, for the aides, the support staff, their operations, their utilities? Is this the number that you managed to give DOE that will be able to support their current operations that they have been doing through time? Because I know in the past you've afforded additional allocation or appropriation for vacancies, many types of vacancies, not just teacher vacancies, and giving the superintendent the authority to move this money around. So I'm asking you, does this number from your calculation, is this a correct number for DOE to operate?
Based on the information, Senator, that we had at the time when we did the budget, we felt that what we did is we funded all the warm bodies on board. We funded the limited term positions, the vacant ones that we knew that was upcoming, and whatever the difference was in the allocation that we provided DOE, we took into account whether or not it was going to cover contractual obligations, utility costs, contract obligations. I don't know whether or not it's going to cover every single one or every expense they have, but we've tried to accommodate and allocate as much as we could to GDOE with what we knew they were going to expect to incur and expense out the year. I understand, I appreciate the superintendent's letter and presentation, and we actually went back and looked at it, and we felt that we weren't probably going to be able to fund everything he said to the maximum amount of what he's requesting. But I feel at least somewhat comfortable that the amount that we appropriated would be at least sufficient to cover at least those fixed costs. And if I can make one adjustment, one correction, I told you the total number of limited positions that we funded was about 215. It's actually 145 positions.
Thank you. Is there any, right, so DOE is looking for 50 vacancies and you funded 145. but also giving the flexibility for the superintendent to move the money around that he needs. Zenny, is there anything within the fixed costs that DOE is incurring or in the operations and the salaries that you see that will be missed with this amount of 209,142,544?
Are you addressing me?
Yes.
Sorry.
Can you speak up? And you're on mute right now. So Zenny, earlier Steve mentioned that he ensured that within this 209,142,544, that fixed costs were paid. 145 limited term positions that are currently vacant were funded. Operations were funded. Contracts were funded. But I'm asking you, utilities were also funded. But I'm asking you what you see that is missing in this number that is not being funded in this $209 million number.
Okay. What we did with the budget office, Senator, is that compare what we had in 2020, compare them with what we have in the bill that we have in the 209. So what we learned is that of the appropriations of 2020, just for the operations alone, so last year was 191 million, and we know we have 178 million, but that excludes, of course, the text. Take out the textbook, we're still a little bit short.
Right, but you receive federal funds for the textbook, right? Isn't that what you're using? Do you need an additional $1.5 million again for? Let's just be real here. We're saying textbooks, but DOE never can buy textbooks because it's used for operational costs. So just say if DOE is short for 1.5 million for the operational cost. That was last year we had the same issue.
That's not what I'm saying.
Mr. Superintendent, every time you receive a $1.5 million appropriation for textbooks, do you use it for textbooks?
That was what you're referring to, Madam Chair, was true for that year. This year, we are on track to expend all of those resources, the 1.5 for textbooks. Yes, so that year again we had fallen behind for whatever reason, but the mandate after that was to make sure we expended it all, and so we checked this morning just to ensure that we were on track for the full expenditure. If I could, and I'm happy if Zenny wants to answer. But
so you need an additional 1.5 million. You need an additional 1.5 million for textbooks again.
Well, that's typically what we've been using to buy textbooks. And I know what you're saying with regard to the federal funds. We don't get federal funds for textbooks, but we are planning to use those federal funds to supplement a lot of instructional material, which I believe will help us offset any shortage in textbooks. But I guess what I'm saying with regard to the budget and whether this will pay for everything we need, I think the way we look at it is there is a cut in the budget, and you've given us the flexibility to try to meet our needs, and we're going to be asked to do what we normally do with a reduction in resources. So what we're going to be looking at this year is obviously. During the COVID-19 year, there are some costs that we would normally incur where we're still wondering whether those costs will be required this year. So for instance, I'm looking at the Healthy Future Fund allocation, and it looks like there is a reduction maybe of getting half those resources. That was normally earmarked towards interscholastics. As we go forward, we're still wondering whether interscholastics will take place. We don't. So, there is a possibility that we may be not be able to do interscholastics for two semesters. I mean for 2/3 of the year, and so of course that would be a savings. But however, if we choose to go and do interscholastics, we're going to have to make sure that the resources work. So the only thing I would say in terms of the challenge with this budget is that the major needs that we normally have and that really you've seen in our budget request have to do with the capital improvement needs around our facilities. And I can get back to the Simon Sanchez piece as well, but in general, you've seen those requests come through because of all the deferred maintenance. And so that 1 million that typically has been provided by DOI will be beneficial for that component. The work on Simon Sanchez is intended to be done and the design be funded and completed by the end of this before the fiscal year ends. We're on track to do that. And then all I'm saying is that if, where the pressure really comes is around maintenance requirements, especially with the mandates and the safety issues. If the students aren't on campus, that may give us some breathing room to be able to address the needs without the same level of, expense for the year. But it's really a matter of how this year turns out. So, COVID-19 is a tough year for everybody, but there are going to be some, budgetary impacts. Some of them are going to be negative, some are going to be positive relative to how we operate this year. And that's what we're looking at as we advise the board. There may be cuts, but if we can see utility savings, that'll help us, adjust to the cuts. My biggest concern is really, like I said, on the federal side, and making good, because those supplemental funds are really helping us kind of move through this year by giving us, making sure we have the ability to address some of the safety requirements, but also the online learning and the home learning is really, helping to offset some of our, things like textbooks. We're able to provide more instructional materials, able to do, more equipment and so forth. So what I'm afraid of is that we don't get the necessary approvals or cooperation from US DOE to grant us a waiver, if that's where we end up and we end up having to request that due to the budget that gets approved.
Yeah, so, this is why I'm asking for some straight talk, because if we're as a body not able to appropriate the Department of Education the money they need to sustain the education of our children and to allow them to excel, then we need to know this up front before we move to the other questions of my colleagues. And so really, I just want to, like I said, let's be real here. Tell us that it's 1.5 million for operational, okay? So you used 1.5 mil that for textbooks this time, but let's straight talk this so that we can move forward and I don't want to see in the newspaper tomorrow that the legislature didn't give Guam Department of Education, or we shorted Guam Department of Education this amount of money. We need to come to like a compromise on what will work for our students and how are we going to move forward. Otherwise, this exercise would be moot, right? And so
no, I appreciate that. I hope that,
I'm not trying to make it difficult for you. I'm just trying to say, be upfront with my colleagues so we know where Guam Department of Education stands.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that over the past several years, you've known that we've tried to work as much as possible within the resources, especially after we got hit by federal tax cuts, and that revenue situation has not gotten much better just because now we're in COVID-19. So, we are trying to hold the agency afloat and make sure we do what we need to do to make the adjustments. My concern though is the 41.5 million is helping us operate through this COVID-19 year, because those are the funds we're using to ensure we meet the public health requirements, for face-to-face, facilitate the online and home learning and all of that. So I wanted to clarify this, so just so everybody has the information. And I'm not saying that we won't end up getting US DOE's approval or flexibility, but I think in addition to the letter, and I hope it's on the drive for all the other senators, was also guidance from US DOE. And there was a whole set of frequently asked questions about maintenance of effort. And if you go through that, whenever you have a chance to do that as part of the budget process, number one is that it does clarify what maintenance of effort means with regard to the level of support provided by the state for elementary, secondary, and post-secondary. So even it refers to higher education. The maintenance of effort requirement not only applies to DOE's share, but it also applies to the governor's share. So that $12 million is also subject to the MOE. Now, how it exactly gets calculated and some of the details on there, you'll see in that guidance, there is some loose, language about how to determine maintenance of effort, and it gives the state some guiding, some guidance on how to construct that and justify it. But at the end of the day, there is going to be a review of the maintenance of effort. I believe it's going to happen starting in September in terms of us reporting out the maintenance of effort, and that after that, maybe towards the course of the end of the calendar year, more of a review from USAID with regard to FY20 and FY21 support. When it comes to elementary and secondary education, I do assume that it also incorporates the charters as well. I don't think they distinguish. It's just, education provided. So as I'm happy to work with all of you on the numbers and trying to figure out different ways to look at the numbers. But in essence, it does say, the average support over the last 3 fiscal years, and they're referring to FY17, 18, and 19. And they want to see that maintenance of effort in FY20 and FY21. In the event that there is we're not able to meet that maintenance of effort, there is the possibility of applying to the secretary for a waiver. And so we actually have already initiated a request for guidance on the waiver or on how we might proceed, given that we're still in the discussion about finalizing the budget numbers. And I'd be happy to keep you abreast of those discussions. But there is an application for a waiver. It gives some, in the guidance, it gives some framework for how the waiver might be considered. They do make, it does say there's an allowance for those states that are dealing with a precipitous decline in revenues, but they don't define precipitous. It says that they will look at it for its plain meaning. So we'll have to figure that out and get guidance from them. So the only thing I have to make a decision about as the superintendent responsible for those funds, as well as the governor, but is that one of the penalties is the possible full refunding of those funds to the federal government. And so with that in mind, one of my concerns, though, is going to be how much can we go forward in obligating and expending those funds, knowing that there is a possibility that we're going to have to pay back those amounts. So, that's the guidance that I'm trying to get from USAID. It doesn't say that that's the only consequence. There may be other consequences that they might contemplate. And I don't say I can read, where they're going to, what direction they will head. But if I'm faced with a consequence of having to repay those funds, obviously one of the decisions is to slow the obligation or cease the obligation or stop spending those funds until we get a better response or get a waiver approved, so that we don't get ourselves into a situation where we have to pay funds and we don't have the money. So that's just something I wanted to share with you, is why that MOE discussion is important. And again, when we get guidance, if we get flexibility, we're happy to share that. But if not, if there's a risk of having to repay it, that's something that I have to kind of weigh and figure out, what's the right level of risk in allocating these funds. And I don't want it to get to a point where we stop purchasing laptops or cease the procurement of, those technology supplies because of that concern. But it's something that we just need more of a comfort level with either the Appropriations Act or with USDOE. So I just thank you for the opportunity. I just want to make sure I shared that with you.
So what is the breaking point for the dollar amount for the requirement of maintenance of effort?
Right now, it depends how again, they said there might be different ways for the state to calculate it, but if you just take the overall appropriation, which puts general fund and, as special funds together, the maintenance of effort would be around $235 million in $235 million. That would include, of course, the allocation for charter schools, because FY17, 18, and 19 did have charter schools incorporated. So if you took that 10.7 out for DOE, it would be about a $224 million. That would seem to be the calculation for maintenance of effort.
Thank you. And what are the possibilities of Guam Department of Education? Have you already started the application process for this waiver when you knew that this bill came out? And we have we have a request for guidance, because the process
for US Ed really is doesn't start until September, where they start requiring reporting on the maintenance of effort, and then they have a review process of their own. So we weren't sure yet whether to make an official application, but again, we're working with USDOE, and if we need to do that, then you know, we can work on that.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right,
Manager-
thank you very much, Vice Speaker. Yes, Zenny?
Thank you. You know, just to continue on with that $219 million, just to share some information, all right? There's about $600,000 and $650,000 that came off of the general fund. That's not budgeted. It was COVID-19 related. And we have transmitted those information, including all the invoices, to FEMA, hoping that they can assist us in actually, you know, securing at least 75%. I think for 75, that's $650,000. And what we were talking earlier this morning with the budget is that we sure what else would be us later on after this fiscal year 2020, and we cannot really point our hand but would be would not be. That's my biggest concern right now. And
Sorry, Zenny, you're breaking up. It's hard for us to hear you right now, but actually, could you hold that thought and then, hello, your connection's bad. Could you hold that thought? We're gonna recess. AV needs to prepare for another hearing that's coming up this evening. I want to recess until tomorrow at 10 a.m. And Zenny, if you could hold on to that thought, and then we'll try again tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're still breaking up. So we're gonna recess for now until tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you.